Yes, how are we all? I hope all is well. My name is Sachin, and this is the Total Cricket Podcast, episode 33. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the only 2020 international between Sri Lanka and India, so let's get right into it. India won this one by 7 wickets with 4 balls remaining. Sri Lanka did put up a bit more of a fight in this one, but the end result was still the same. India winning all 9 games on this tour, a clean sweep of the hosts. And I'll begin with the team news. And from the last ODI, Sri Lanka made a whole host of changes. Ashan Priyanjan, Tisara Pereira, Basun Shanaka, Isuru Udana, and C. Kuget Prasanna coming in for Milinda Siriwardena, Lahiru Thirimana, Malinda Pushpakumara, Vishwa Fernando, and Wanindu Hasaranga. India, they made the 2 changes, KL Rahul and Akshar Patel coming in for Ajinkya Rahane and Shardul Thakur. Now let's get into the recap. And India, they won the toss and had no hesitation in fielding first. Obviously, chasing has been the way to go for most teams in 2020s. Sri Lanka managed a pretty respectable score in their innings, 170 for 7. They started off really nicely, getting 60 in the power play, but the wheels did come off in the middle before a late flurry pushed them up towards that competitive total. The star was Dilshan Munawira with 53 off 29, and Ashan Priyanjan on debut also did a decent job, 40 he got, and Isuru Dana down the order getting 19 off 10, a late cameo to get Sri Lanka to that score. The Indian bowlers, Kuldeep Yadav was the pick of the bowlers, taking 2 for 20. Yuzvendra Chahal, he picked up 3 wickets, although he was a little bit expensive, going for 43. Jasprit Bumrah and Bhuvneshwar Kumar both picked up a wicket apiece, and Akshar Patel, although he did not take a wicket, was pretty economical, going for 29 in his spell. India's reply, it was a pretty comfortable chase for them. Rohit Sharma went out early, but then KL Rahul and Virat Kohli got things going before Manish Pandey came in to finish the job with the Indian captain. Kohli top scoring with 82 off 54, and Manish Pandey supporting him ably with 51 off 36. KL Rahul with 24 off 18 also provided them with a decent start. The Sri Lankan bowling, not much to write home about. Angelo Matthews was expensive. Isuru Dana, Asit Malinga, Sikubia Prasanna all picked up the 1 wicket. Akila Dhananjaya didn't pick up a wicket, although he was pretty economical, going for just the 28. Tisara Pereira bowled 8 balls, going for 20 runs. That was it for the game. That was it for the tour. What has been really a damp squib of a tour in terms of a competition, but certainly it has been very interesting to see the dominance of India, seeing how good they are. They have been a joy to watch on this tour. Now I'll get into the breakdown. It's not going to be as detailed as usual, as it is a 2020, a one-off game. Very difficult to judge players just on the one game. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I'll start with the Sri Lankan batting, and it was a familiar story for Sri Lanka. Really, what happened in the ODIs, except just truncated into the 20 overs, starting well, losing wickets, stalling in the middle. Although, to be fair, there was a late flurry in this one to deviate from the script. But nonetheless, Sri Lanka will be disappointed that they didn't get to 200. I think they were 20, 30 runs short, I believe. And considering that they got off to such a great start, 60 in the power play, they'll definitely be ruining the fact that they lost all those wickets in the middle overs. And I think the difference between the two teams was the amount of dot balls they faced. Sri Lanka faced 50 dot balls compared to India only facing 21 dot balls. Sri Lanka were not able to rotate the strike, particularly in the middle overs, keep things ticking over, whereas the Indians were able to accumulate runs at a steady rate. Now, Niroshan Dikbella, he got a brisk 17 off 14, typical Dikbella innings, a couple of nice paddle shots over the keeper's head, but a bizarre shot to get out, trying to ramp it, but the ball wasn't really there. For Dikbella, again, he needs to go on with his innings more, play the percentages a bit more. Upul Taranga, he was gone pretty quickly for 5, and Haranga, typical dismissal, huge gap between bat and pad, and a beautiful Bhuvaneshwar Kumar slow ball in swinger cleaned him up. Bit of an issue for Sri Lanka with Haranga struggling in the T20 format. He averages 13 in 17 games with a high score of 37. That's not what you want from your captain. So, alarm bells for Sri Lanka that this trend of the captain underperforming in recent times is continuing. Dilshan Munawira, he looked like a completely different player from the one we saw in those last few ODIs. 2020 is clearly his game. He doesn't have to occupy the crease as much. He doesn't have to score as many singles and twos. Dealing in boundaries is what he does best. Coming in the power play, he's able to do that. His stroke play was majestic, particularly on the up. I thought against the fast bowlers, he times the ball really crisply, and it was his maiden 50 in the format. So congratulations to him. 53 off 29 with 6 fours, an explosive innings. The only disappointing thing was the way he got out to a half tracker from Kuldeep Yadav. I don't know how he missed that. That dismissal really derailed the innings and limited Sri Lanka's potential. They were looking like they could get up to 200 while Munawira was there. But also another key dismissal was that of Angelo Matthews, stumped off Yuzvendra Chahal. That was a wonderful ball by Chahal. Matthews managing just the 7 as the premier batsman in the team. Going so early, Matthews is very dangerous at the back end of innings. That was a huge blow to Sri Lanka. Ashan Priyanjan on debut, not really known as a 2020 player, known more as a finesse accumulator type player, but he did a reasonable job, started very slowly and didn't have a great deal of intent, but once he got in, he started to play more shots, and at the back end, with the help of Visarudana, got Sri Lanka up to a competitive total 40 off 40, so still not quite quick enough for Priyanjan, but given the fact that there were wickets falling around him, I don't think it was a particularly bad innings, but certainly his lack of explosiveness is the reason why he hasn't been considered in the T20 team before, and why when everyone's fit, I doubt he figures in this team, but nonetheless, decent job by him. Tissara Perera, it's what Sri Lankan fans have come to expect from him. He had a nice 6 down the ground into his arc, but then chopped on from Yuzvendra Chahal. Tissara Perera has flattered to deceive throughout his career, and this game was no exception. Dasun Shanaka came in and he was absolutely clueless against Chahal, did not pick the wrong one, and was trapped plumb in front of his second consecutive duck in the format. Hard to gauge Dasun Shanaka. He has a big reputation for hard hitting, hasn't had a real string of games for Sri Lanka, but in the last 2 games, he struggled against the leg spin, got a golden duck against Australia. Adam Zampa trapped him in front, and this time Chahal. I think his forte is against the faster bowling, hitting them to all parts. So hopefully we get to see that sooner or later from Dasun Shanaka. Sikuge Prasanna came in, was busy, but then he held out to Kuldeep Yadav, Virat Kohli taking the catch in the outfield in cow corner. Isarudana did a very good job. I was surprised at how well he batted. When do you see a Sri Lankan tailender bat as well as he did? 19 off 10, really decent hitting to get Sri Lanka up to that total. But you really felt that it wasn't quite enough, especially with Virat Kohli and Mahendra Singh Dhoni in the opposition. The Indian bowling, Yuzvendra Chahal picking up 3 wickets. He did go for quite a few runs, 43. He got carted for 5 sixes, incredibly, but he actually bowled half his deliveries with dot balls. So for Chahal, he was throwing the ball up in this innings, and that did cost him at some times, but that's also how he got his wickets. The ball to Matthews, particularly, was quite beautiful, and the way he set up Shanaka as well was fantastic. He bowled a lot more wrong-uns than he did in the ODI series. Stump to stump, as usual. He is a good bowler in this format. We've seen for RCB in the IPL, quality bowler Yuzvendra Chahal. Kuldeep Yadav, I thought, though, was the pick of the bowlers too, for 20 in his 4. His control continues to impress me as a Chinaman bowler. You're going to spin the ball, but the control is key, and he has that in spades. He looks like a very calm cricketer, and every time he's played for India, he has impressed. He's going to be an absolute star. He's only 22 years old, and I think the world is his oyster, certainly for Kuldeep Yadav. Jasprit Bumrah and Bhuvaneshwar Kumar did what we've come to expect of them. They did both bowl a few poor deliveries, but Bhuvaneshwar with that wonderful knuckleball, slower ball, the skill to be able to bowl a slower ball like that that keeps the seam up, allowing it to swing. Freakish from Bhuvneshwar. And Jasprit Bumrah, the Yorkers, the slow balls, the bounces, that bag of tricks. Such a skillful bowler. The last guy to talk about is Akshar Patel. Economical, industrious, as per usual, from Akshar Patel. Not necessarily the biggest wicket taker, but he knows how to restrict the batsman bowling that flat trajectory. Very difficult to get underneath him. He didn't go for a six, which is very decent. Now into the Indian innings, and this was pretty clinical once again from India. Rohit Sharma managing just the 9 of 8 deliveries. He top-edged a Lasith Malinga bouncer to Thisara Perera at mid-off, and this time Thisara Perera held on, unlike that time when he dropped Rohit Sharma on naught only for Rohit to go on and score 264. But KL Rahul, he was back in the opening position and he was right at home there, 24 of 18. He did pretty well until a bit of a soft dismissal, check drive that went in the air, and Dasun Shanaka took a great catch, to be fair, diving to his left. But KL Rahul averages over 50 in the format. He has a 2020 International 100 to his name, so certainly he's a great backup to Rohit Sharma and Shikhar Dhawan for India in those opening positions. Virat Kohli in his 50th 2020 International. Here's a quick stat attack for you before I begin talking about him. He has the most runs in chases in the format now, 1,116 runs. To be exact, he averages 84.66 in chases in this format. He has 4 consecutive 50s in the format against Sri Lanka, averages nearly 54 in the format, despite having never scored a century, close now to 2,000 runs as well. Absolutely incredible record does Virat Kohli have, and the reason he is so good in all formats, freakishly good, is that he keeps it simple and plays with such little risk, and he's able to do this because of the amount of skill he has. He plays orthodox cricket strokes and focuses on finding gaps in the field, running hard between the wickets, and when he is playing against the spinners, generates an incredible amount of bat speed that takes a simple flick off his pants and turns it into a 4. Incredible the way he's able to generate speed off the bat. And he doesn't have to hit the big shots. He just hit the 1-6 in this innings, and yet his strike rate was over 150. It's such an uncomplicated style. It's so skillful that it's so low risk. Incredible Virat Kohli, the master, at work once again in this game. He's been toying with the Sri Lankans over the past 3 games. Manish Pandey continued to do a good job after coming in for the 4th ODI, his maiden 50 in the format, and he supported Kohli really well, just kept the strike ticking over, appreciated that Kohli was playing fantastically, gave him the strike, and then when Kohli got out, he finished the game off in style. Still had a good strike rate of 141, Manish Pandey. He looks like he's going to cement that number 4 slot for India. And MS Dhoni, once again, just like in the 5th ODI, coming out to dot the I's and cross the T's, as it were the final formalities, getting one off the one ball that he faced. The Sri Lankan bowling, Angelo Matthews opened the bowling. Unfortunately, at the speed that he bowls, when you do drop short or give the batsman width, you're going to pay more often than not, particularly in the power play overs. Isuru Udana, I thought he bowled decently. Again, not the quickest, but he's one of the more skillful Sri Lankan bowlers out there. Has a very decent slower ball that comes out of the back of the hand. And I like the fact that he at least had a plan. Maybe it wasn't executed incredibly well, but at least there was some thinking behind his bowling, and he was rewarded late on with the wicket of Kohli. He just chipped it into the outfield. A pretty soft dismissal, it must be said. Lasith Malinga, I thought he bowled a lot better in this game than he did in the ODIs. And if you look at his records in ODIs compared to 2020s, since his comeback this year, in ODIs he's played 13 games, taken 10 wickets at 62, but in 2020s he's played 6 games, taken 12 wickets at 16. And that includes that hat-trick against Bangladesh. So he has been able to continue to perform in this format. So while I think he's coming to the end of the line in the one-day format, I think in the 2020 format he still has a place only 4 overs, so it's not as hard on his body, and his skill set now is more suited to the 2020 format. So I think Lasith Malinga still has a place in the 2020 side. Sikuge Prasanna, I thought he bowled pretty decently as well. 3 overs, 1 for 25. Got the wicket of KL Rahul just driving it into the covers. That was a fantastic catch by Dasud Shanaka, by the way, diving to his left. But Sikuge Prasanna, I like what he offers to the 2020 team. He can bowl, he can hit a long ball as well, fields well, he's a fiery character. I like what he brings to this 2020 team. Akila Dhananjaya went wicketless, but I thought he bowled pretty well, particularly after his first over, going for 10 the next three, went for just the 18. Again, struggled a little bit, landing those wrong-uns and leg spinners, but on the whole, pretty decent, and it was clear that once again, India were very wary of him and played him with a great deal of respect compared to a lot of the other bowlers. Thisara Perera, same old, same old. Thisara Perera, his bowling over the last few years has gone backwards. He bowls a lot of loose balls, whether it be full tosses, half trackers, wide, down the leg side. You just get the whole smorgasbord from Thisara Perera, and I think his time is coming to an end in a Sri Lankan shirt across formats. He's simply not performing. He's been given chance after chance. It's time to look at some other all-rounders, guys like Dasud Shanaka, Wanindu Hasaranga, who have had nowhere near the opportunities that Thisara Perera has. But that was the game. Indian pretty comfortable winners. And now I'd just like to look at the tour as a whole, what both teams learned, where both teams are at the moment, and what they can look to do in the future. For Sri Lanka, I think this series was a good indication of where they are as a team, one that is struggling to win games of cricket. Just look at their record across formats. This year in Test cricket, they've played 8 games, they've won just the 2, and they've lost 6. In ODIs, they've played 21, they've won just the 4, they've lost 16. 2020s is the only format where they have a positive record, 5 wins, 4 losses from 9 games, but you could argue that that is inflated due to the fact that they played South Africa and Australia early in the year when they were significantly weakened, those two teams. So for Sri Lanka, it's been a terrible year on the whole, and this is just the latest disaster, really, for Sri Lanka cricket in a year of many disasters. Funnily enough, what I found quite bizarre is their record at the Premadasa in this format: 2 wins, 12 losses in the 14 games they played at this venue in the format. A bit of a hoodoo, quite bizarre. Maybe they need to start playing elsewhere, like Pallakela or something like that. Maybe that will help the team out. The Premadasa is becoming a little bit of a trap for the Sri Lankans, but that is pretty insignificant on the grand scheme of things. For Sri Lanka, there are many things that are going wrong. There's not just one thing that if I click my fingers, then everything will be fine and dandy. There's a systematic problem in Sri Lankan cricket. You look at it: inconsistent selection, inconsistent captains, inconsistent coaching staff, poor fitness and conditioning, not the required skills in all 3 departments, poor decisions by Sri Lanka cricket, the board that is, low confidence in the team, losing so many games, the fear of failure, fan unrest, and I think possibly the biggest one, injuries. Sri Lanka has so many injuries, and I have no doubt in my mind that if they had their full quota of players to pick from, that they would have won 1 or 2 games at least on this tour. That's been really difficult for an already struggling side to now deal with this. And they're not just bit part players. These are some big players they're missing. Guys like Asela Gunaratna, Kusal Pereira, Nuwan Pradeep, Dhammika Prasad, Dinesh Chandimal, Danushka Gunatilaka, and Suranga Lakmal only just came back into the squad for this 2020. These are players who have been quite important to Sri Lanka over the last 2-3 years that haven't been available for selection, and it's cost them dearly. So these things, these issues have to be resolved if Sri Lanka are to get back to where they want to be. I don't know how they're all going to get resolved, but I think it starts with a clear plan of what you want to do. If there is clarity in the decision-making process, that should make things a lot better, because if there is some sort of goal, a clear plan, it's a lot easier for people to be patient, and it's also a lot easier for the players to grow. rather than at the moment when things are very confused, it seems, in the Sri Lankan camp. So I think clarity in their plans would really help. And I actually forgot as well one of the problems, which is more of a deep rooted problem, is the poor quality and infrastructure in the domestic cricket system. That one might be the hardest one for Sri Lanka to overcome. That's still going to take quite a while, I feel, for them to really turn around. But looking ahead for Sri Lanka, what is to come, they have a couple of weeks off before going to the UAE to play a full series against Pakistan. That will be 2 tests, 5 ODIs, and 3 2020 internationals. I believe with the possibility of one of those 2020s being played at Lahore. But that will not be an easy series for Sri Lanka. They're going to want some of those players back, and they're going to desperately want a change in fortune. Speaking of fortune, another thing I forgot to talk about, they've had some bad luck with the tosses. They only won 2 out of the 9 tosses on this tour. That hasn't helped against this rampant India team. So maybe their luck could change as well with that. But certainly for Sri Lanka, there are talented players, but they're underperforming. It's not like there's no hope. It's just that there's a lot of little problems, some of them big, some of them not as big, but they need to be remedied quite soon because this slide from Sri Lanka is quite dramatic. So fingers crossed for that, certainly for Sri Lanka fans. As for India, a clean sweep on tour. I don't think they could have asked for much more, and I have to commend them on their professionalism, keeping their foot on the gas throughout what was a pretty uncompetitive series for the Indians. But let's be honest about it, this was not a big test for India. This is a team that has been one of the best teams in cricket for the last 2 years. They've been pretty dominant across formats in the past 2 years, but most of that work has been done in Asia. There are still question marks about their ability to translate that outside Asia. And in a way, it's a little bit unfair, I feel, because most countries are performing well at home but struggling away from home. So India, I think it's hard to criticize them when almost every country is doing the same. But India have the opportunity to prove the doubters wrong. They've got a tour to South Africa coming up in this South African summer. They go to England in 2018 for their summer, and they go to Australia in 18-19 for their summer. So in the next 15 months, India are going to go to South Africa, England, and Australia. That is going to be the litmus test for this team. If they can succeed on those tours, then they will be the undisputed best team in world cricket. And looking at it, I think they have the tools to do it. The players they have pretty much all bases covered. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go to England and win the series or draw the series. Same in South Africa, same in Australia. All those 3 teams are vulnerable to some degree. So I certainly don't put it past the Indians doing very well on those tours. And if they can be as successful as they hope to be on those tours, then I think we might see the handing over of the dominance in cricket. We've seen the West Indies hand it over to Australia, who then handed it over to South Africa, and now in the last 2 years, India have been the dominant team. We could see the passing of the torch to India now as the dominant team in world cricket for the next 5 to 6 years. That is certainly a big possibility. So much bigger tests for India lie ahead, but this tour certainly didn't do their credentials any harm. Their next series is a limited overs tour, Australia coming to play in India, 5 ODIs and 3 2020s. I always find it a bit strange the way India's home tours are organized a lot. You play the tests, then a few months later you come back to play the limited overs formats. I don't really get that, especially when you just have the limited overs formats. It's nowhere near especially because the limited overs formats lack a lot of context. You kind of need to put them together with the tests to elevate their standing. So that's always been something that puzzles me, but nonetheless, Australia versus India becoming one of the biggest rivalries in world cricket, and for both teams, a litmus test of their credentials as a one-day unit, both 2 of the best one-day teams in the world. So that's it for the podcast. That's it for the tour. It's been a long tour. I've been talking about it a hell of a lot, and I'm glad it's over. It's been a damn squib, as I said before, very uncompetitive, and hopefully we see some more competitive series in the future because cricket desperately needs them, and thankfully the ongoing Bangladesh, Australia, and West Indies England series are providing some healthy competitive cricket. But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, you can check us out. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. All those links can be found on the Twitter page. But until next time, thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.